A year ago, Elijah Wood was gunned down while working in a racetrack service station. He was 1 week away from his 24th birthday. It was the first homicide in Oconee County in 2 years, and by all accounts, seemed like it was going to be a tough crime to solve. The motive wasn't clear, but the video was. They had footage of the crime and footage of a potential getaway car. The killer wore black clothing from head to toe, but investigators didn't give up on finding justice. And last week, they were able to say, "We got him." However, they're still looking for some help. For today's episode of BrainScratch, we're going to review the original episode. We're going to take you through all the available pieces of the puzzle from that time, back when we originally reported it, and then I'm going to tell you the latest developments, how the suspect was tracked down and captured, and the call for more assistance that's coming from law enforcement. If you remember the previous episode and want to skip to the recap, please use the time codes in the description box below or hover your mouse over that red line at the bottom of your YouTube player and you'll see that it's broken up into segments. Just look for where the update segment begins. Now, let's roll back the clock to our original coverage about this case from June of 2021. We're not talking about the Missy Beavers investigation, though there are some striking similarities. One of those being, we're not sure if it's a man or a woman dressed all in black. Let's dive into this story together and see what we can learn, starting with, where does today's case take place? With a quick stop at Wikipedia, Oconee County is a county located in the northeastern part of the U.S. state of Georgia. As of the 2010 census, the population was over 32,000 people. The county seat is Watkinsville. Watkinsville is where there is a racetrack gas station. One evening, a young man is working at the gas station when tragedy strikes. For anyone not familiar, Racetrack is an American corporation that operates a chain of gas service stations across the southern United States. The firm is Georgia's third largest private company with sales of $9.1 billion in 2013. And this one in particular, and I think most of them run 24/7. They're open all night long. They have all kinds of different services, food and beverages that you can get. If you're from California, it's probably a bit like an AM, PM, or maybe even a 7-Eleven gas station if you happen to be around one of those. Here in the Midwest, like probably more like a Super America or something like that. But let's learn about some of the basics of this case over at onlineathens.com. Oconee County Sheriff's deputies are trying to identify a killer who brazenly walked into a gas station on the outskirts of Watkinsville early Friday and shot the clerk to death during an apparent robbery. Elijah Wood, a 23-year-old resident of Watkinsville, was killed behind the checkout counter. Wood's body was found about 1:40 a.m. by a customer. A patron came into the store to buy some drinks on his way to work, and when he got up to the counter, he saw the clerk behind the counter on the floor. He called us, the sheriff said. A responding deputy attempted to render aid to Wood, but he died in the store. The suspect was covered from head to toe in black clothing, so we don't know race or gender yet other than our speculation, said Sheriff Hale. And here you can see, obviously, there's some decent cameras in this establishment. We've got some pretty good screen grabs from those cameras, and we also have footage that we'll be looking at as well. Investigators don't know how the killer arrived at the store. I think we can pretty much assume from that they didn't park in the parking lot for the store. I'm sure the racetrack has cameras outside as well. They've got pumps out there, so they're watching those. Seems like they parked somewhere else. But investigators are studying outside video cameras and other cameras in the area that might provide a clue, according to Sheriff Hale. And here is Elijah Wood. I can tell you guys from taking a look through his Facebook, this is someone very dedicated to family. Seems like someone that has strong faith as well. And a young guy, he's only 23 years old when this occurs. Elijah was a great man, huge in stature and in heart. Elijah was 23 and about to celebrate his 24th birthday on the 26th of this month. He dies literally a week before his birthday. He was a big family man and believed in family and always making special efforts to be a part of the family. He loved his God and his country and was always willing to help anyone he felt was in need. He would go out of his way to check on you. He will be truly missed and always loved. This world has lost a treasure. I wish all could have met Elijah. I don't know. We'll watch the footage, but I can't make a lot of sense out of it by seeing what's going on there. Honestly, my first impression on the footage is it seems like the person is there with the specific intent of killing him and then leaving. That's it. But we're going to talk about some conditions that might change our perception of that as we go on here today. Over at 11alive.com, this is a tough day for us. We know Elijah and his family well, in a good way, the sheriff's office said in an online statement. We didn't have to look up his father's address because we already knew where he lives. The sheriff's office is now urging anyone with information on the killer to step forward. They've released photos in hopes that someone will recognize the suspect. However, the person's face is heavily obscured by a dark mask and drawn hoodie. So we've seen the kind of faraway shots. Here are the best close-ups that they've been releasing of the suspect. And I got to tell you, from the conversations I'm seeing happen online, a lot of people think this suspect is wearing makeup. And a lot of people, I think, because of that, are leaning with the assumption that this could be a female. As a matter of fact, I could say the majority of people, at least in the threads that I'm seeing around this, are saying they think it's a female. Other people are saying, no, I think it's a male. I think in either case, they could be wearing makeup. It just really looks to me like there's eyeliner in particular. Like the lines that are being drawn around their eyes are really, really hard. And I don't know if this is done. I'm pretty familiar with like contrast changes and brightness changes on video and in pictures. This looks like more than that to me. I'm a little concerned that maybe if they ran this through some kind of AI touch-up, that the AI is actually drawing that in. But I don't think that's what's going on here, because so much of the image outside of that is pretty harshly blurred. And I think the AI would have cleaned that up as well. So it does kind of seem like these are pretty dark, very strong lines. And it looks like they are all the way around both eyes. But let's take a look at the footage. Because you guys know I'm always looking for intent in these cases. Can we tell from the footage what the intent of this person is? Maybe with how they're coming in, how they're moving when they're in there. So it certainly seems like a person that's driven just with the tempo of how they're walking in. There's also a moment where their hand kind of kicks out right there at the end. They're like their thumb swings out. It looks to me like they're saying something, like they're talking to him as they approach. But you can see we're talking a matter of a few seconds, and then this person heads out. But wait, turns around, comes back with, I don't know, that hopping motion. It almost seems like a confidence thing. I don't know if they're coming back to check to make sure. But they spend practically no time over there and then run back out the door. Really disturbing and certainly kind of strange. Investigators said the gunman walked into the store, covered from head to toe in black clothing, pointed his handgun at Wood, and pulled the trigger. Now, we're not being told how many shots. I don't know if it's a single shot or not. I don't think we're going to bump into those details as we're going through everything here again today. And it's interesting because in the video that we are seeing, there's nothing that I could recognize as flashes from the muzzle or anything like that going on. So I really have no idea in terms of how many shots might have been fired. Quote, "We haven't been able to review all the camera footage. We don't know for sure whether anything was taken from the store. So we're trying to get all that information together. We don't want to speculate on what the motive was and what the means for why it happened," Sheriff Hale said. So obviously, he's trying to stay pretty level about processing this to try to figure out that intent. About the family, he says, "They were devastated. We went to their house and woke them up in the dead of the night to let them know that their loved one had been gunned down in a convenience store they were working at," the sheriff explained. Only Wood and the gunman were in the store at the time of the shooting, the deputies said. Still that first weekend, friends, family, police looking for answers. Here we have friends standing on the lawn near the racetrack gas station on Sunday afternoon, March 21st, holding signs, hashtag justice for Elijah. Tip's phone number has been included. Speaking of which, if you have information on this case, the description box down below has the contact information that you need. And there's a substantial reward that is attached to this case at this point. We'll get to that as we continue through the articles here. Let's take a look over at the Facebook page for the Oconee County, Georgia Sheriff's Office and see what their considerations are very early in the case. This case has shocked our entire community. And trust me when I say that we're doing everything humanly possible to solve it. We've been touched by your outpouring of love and kindness to Elijah's family. I also want to assure you that Racetrack has been extremely supportive of the family and helpful in the investigation in a level that is beyond our expectations. We are tirelessly working around the clock with our local, state, and federal partners to follow every lead to its logical conclusion. We are following evidence and facts, not chasing theory and conjecture. And that is one of the tough things we frequently see in cases like this, that, law enforcement will put out some information like video or like images like that. And then soon they have to come out with a statement about, okay, please stop sending us all these tips because we can't process all this stuff. And we're worried that you're taking our attention away from the real aspects of the case that we need to focus on. I can tell you with the threads that I've seen around those images being released by the sheriff's office here, people are they're attaching Facebook profiles of people that they think might be the person. And I got to say, in a lot of cases, they're attaching profiles of women there. I don't think that's what the sheriff's office is looking for here. I don't think that's the type of interaction they're looking for. If you're someone that has information and hey, someone was acting really weird that night. A friend of mine or an acquaintance of mine just wasn't the same the following day, or missed work or something along those lines. Those are the types of things that should be called into the tip line also. I don't think those should be posted kind of publicly on Facebook. You want to make sure that that information gets into where it can be helpful and really be used by investigators as quickly as possible. And I don't know that the investigators working the case, I would probably think those aren't the people that are monitoring the Facebook page. So, but interestingly in this case, we don't see them kind of put out that, that message to the public, hey, we're being overrun by your suggestions here of random Facebook pages that you're pasting in the comments down below. Please understand that we have to protect the integrity of the investigation, and there is evidence and information that has not and will not be released. If I may speak plainly to you, a little bit of a warning here. Baseless theories are not helpful. And quite frankly, there has not been enough information released for anyone to form a logical conclusion. Like all of you, I am appalled by this heinous act, and as a member of our community, I want this crime solved as much as anyone. As your sheriff, I promise that your sheriff's office is working as hard as we can to solve this crime. Signed by Sheriff James A. Hale, Jr. And he puts it plainly here back at onlineathens.com. It's a tough one. We're working hard at it, he said. I need that one break that will bust this case wide open, but right now, we don't have it. Officers have been gathering video footage from other locations in an effort to identify a vehicle the gunman might have used. So we've got another piece of video we'll be looking at as well. We don't know anything about the vehicle, Hale said, adding that the killer did not arrive in a vehicle that had parked in the store's lot. So pretty much confirmation there. They parked somewhere else. We also have the FBI analyzing the video to look for details we might have missed or couldn't see, he said. I love that. A case of this nature, we saw it in the Missy Beavers case. They are tough. They are really tough to process. All hands on deck. Get all the help that you can to start looking at this. The video shows the killer leaving the counter after shooting Wood, pausing at the door, then returning to the counter momentarily before leaving the store. We don't know what the purpose for that was, Sheriff Hale said. If there was audio, that might shed some light on it, but there's not any, so we can't hear anything that happened in the store. It's really unfortunate that they aren't recording audio in some of those safety systems. It's weird because most of the time we hear that there's no audio. Now with some of these newer cameras that are like, doorbell cameras and outdoor cameras and stuff like that, audio seems to be becoming a little bit more of a normal thing. I wish businesses would kind of jump on that and just get some audio hooked up into those same video systems. I'm sure it would be some type of minor upgrade to be able to do that. Obviously, the person has a distinctive walk and a distinctive way of moving around, Hale said. The video also shows the person is likely right-handed. A funeral was held for Wood, who leaves behind his father, a sister, and 2 brothers. From what I understand, he was also an amazing uncle. And here there is a vigil that is held kind of at the same location where we saw them holding the signs asking for justice. It's near the racetrack gas station on March 26th. Approximately 60 mourners participated in tonight's candlelight vigil to remember Elijah Wood. Sheriff James Hale and several deputies were among those who paid their respects. I think that's really, really cool for them to be there to show their support as well. We're working hard, Hale said. We're receiving assistance from the GBI, FBI, and even ATF to work this case. And that vigil happened on Elijah's 24th birthday. And now we get to the second piece of footage that we have to review in today's case, once again posted from the Oconee Sheriff's Office. This video shows a vehicle of interest arriving prior to the racetrack shooting. The vehicle is seen traveling 441 south, turning right onto Hog Mountain Road, driving past the racetrack, turning right onto West or Wellbrook Road, and stopping for a period of time before driving away. And then it notes this video speed may not be in real time. So just to give you the map, here's where the racetrack is. They're saying it's coming south on 441, making a right on Hog Mountain, and then a right on Wellbrook, and then parking somewhere up here, and then at some point taking off and leaving. Anyone with information on this vehicle or who may have seen this vehicle is asked to contact the Oconee County Sheriff's Office. So let's check the video. Now I got to tell you guys, the view on this video isn't great. I've got a new version that we'll take a look at, but it's this car way back here. We can see it gets to an intersection, makes a right at that intersection, then it's over here, literally dips out of screen, kind of comes back in. This lens seems to have a bit of an angle on it. And then way out here somewhere, you're going to see it make a right turn. That's where it makes that final right turn. And then it stops and parks somewhere about here. Now I want to note, see these lights here? There's another vehicle that's coming. I don't think this is the same vehicle. And the only reason I'm concerned about it is because they're still letting the video play to this point and showing all of this of it down here. Now, it could be that there's an edit in there. I think that's why they're trying to note that, hey, look, this video might not be in real time. The beginning of the video has a time code, and I can tell that is actually in real time for the first view. The views after that, the time code disappears, so I can't confirm if it's in real time or not. But I made a version of this where I've zoomed in as much as I can and still trying to be reasonable with being able to tell what's what and not turning everything into giant blocks on us. So let's take a look at this one. So this is zoomed in just on kind of that sweet spot of right before the intersection. There. My impression on it, and this is not professional at all. You know, this is me just using my little video editing tools for my YouTube channel here. And there's all kinds of color that's being thrown around here. We got big bright lights. This one shifts from blue to red just as about as it passes. There's certainly a red tint that is being kicked off of it as it's going through this intersection, but I don't know. There's big bright light sources around here. It could be a white truck, and it could be that a red source is hitting it and making it look that way. It kind of seems like it, I don't know, kind of seems like there's a red hue on that that's pretty strong. Here's the same scene, kind of zoomed in, following it the whole way. And there it is. And then one more time, just slowed down 25%. That's about the best that I could get with that. Now here's the other one where it comes into frame. It just leaves the frame really quickly. Here it is 25% slower. And now here's where it goes and does the parking job. So we can see it pretty clearly here. And especially because you can see it's two separate headlights, you can tell about that right turn because of the shape, the change of the shape of the red lights. But I can also see a little bit of the front lights still kind of kicking out here. And at first, when this guy went driving by, I'm like, oh, I wonder if his lights were lighting up something on the road there. But you can see this white light is still happening. There is what I think is an edit there, but it seems to me like that's already after that other vehicle has driven by. So that vehicle at the end, I'm like 90% sure that's not the same vehicle. This is the vehicle that they've described in terms of its movements. I can still see its brake light a little bit. Now I can still see its headlight. That's the location for its headlight. And it's still there. It's like a pixel, but it's still there as that other car drives by. It's possible that vehicle is associated with the suspect, but we don't know for sure. We're putting it out there to see if we can get anybody, a car salesman or someone who can tell us what they see in the video, which is not very good. I mean, he's admitting it. It's not great. I mean, it's on the fringes of that camera. It's way out in terms of distance. But there is a possibility someone might know the vehicle's make through the headlights or taillights, he said. Yeah, especially on that zoomed one, I think you get a decent sense of the proportion of the taillights, but you don't really get the shape because you're zoomed in so far at that point, it just turns them into a square. So it is going to be tough. It's definitely a vehicle that is of interest to us because it comes through the area right before the killer shows up in the video at the store, the sheriff said. I'm pretty sure with them being able to check the time codes on all of these different security systems, I'm pretty sure that they know that that's the car they're looking for. Investigators have not determined a motive for the crime and said nothing was stolen from the station. It's just really weird. Robbery gone wrong. That should mean that the connectivity between Elijah and the perpetrator isn't probably all that strong. There's a chance they might not know each other at all. Over at ClassicCityNews.com, after 2 months, Oconee County store clerk's killer remains unidentified. Sheriff James Hale remains confident the killer will be found and arrested. Quote, "We will continue to track down all leads and use every resource at our disposal to find Elijah's killer. I personally believe that it's only a matter of time." Investigators also lean heavily on the belief that the figure in dark clothing and mask is a male. We feel pretty sure it's a male, but again, without knowing for sure, Hale said. If there is someone that was the getaway driver, I hope they're out there. I hope they're watching the media around this. Tripp actually talked about this on the podcast episode as well. Call it in, help this case, get yourself protected from a major, major fallout. He continues here that Tripp did talk to law enforcement about the potential of a second person being involved. And what he was told was that person could be charged with murder as well. You really want to be on the right side of that courtroom in a situation like this, especially if this was something as simple as, hey, I was told I was going to be in on this robbery. They were going to cut me in for half. Next thing I know, this person's running out and says, go, go, go. There's no money. They say that they've murdered this guy that was working there. Yeah, I'm really hopeful that someone can come around on that and also just help this family find the justice that they deserve. When I originally looked into this case, I wasn't sure we'd ever see it solved. And quite honestly, the way that it gets solved, I've never heard of this tool being used before. So we're both going to learn together a bit as we go through the details here. This was the sketch of the suspect. We now have a face that we can put to that sketch. And here it is. Over at ClassicCityNews.com, former UGA football player arrested for murder of Oconee County racetrack clerk. Oconee County Sheriff's investigators, along with members of the ATF, the FBI, and Philadelphia Police Department, arrested Akil Nasir Crumpton for the murder of Elijah James Woods, Oconee County Sheriff James Hale announced. Crumpton is from Philadelphia, played football for the University of Georgia in 2017 and 2018, and was a student at UGA until 2021. First thing that stuck out to me is we've got involvement with a police department that's like 700 miles away, Philadelphia Police Department. What is that about? As a matter of fact, the arrest happens in Philadelphia. So we don't have Crumpton even living in Georgia currently. From what I understand, he did not graduate from UGA. Quote, "It's a great relief to finally have the suspect in custody," Hale said in a released statement. I'm also seeing this picture, and I don't know. I know what it's alluding to. I don't know if I would lean on it too much, and I'm not seeing that this is coming from law enforcement. We've got the suspect photo over on the left. We have a photo from his social media, it looks like, of him sitting in the back of a car on the right. And the shoes are highlighted, showing that maybe it's the same pair of shoes that he wore to commit the actual crime. Like I said, I'm not finding anything to support that from law enforcement. I'm seeing this one photo in this particular article, and they're not even describing what it is. I personally don't think a photo like that would be particularly helpful in trying to, say that this is the suspect. I think it's casual information once you already have a connection made there, which you're going to see there's a pretty strong tool that's used for making that connection. Philadelphia investigators advised that they suspected Akil Crumpton was the shooter in their case. So Philadelphia investigators have another murder case that happened in their neck of the woods. They think he's the shooter, and somehow they made a link between that case and what happened in Georgia. That information led to a more in-depth investigation, which produced evidence to secure an arrest warrant for Crumpton for Woods' murder. Now, what's interesting about that is, and we're not going to see any information about murder charges actually happening in Philadelphia. It looks like there are other charges in Philadelphia, but not murder charges. So I'm wondering if, Philadelphia PD didn't have maybe enough physical evidence, or the case wasn't quite strong enough. Like, obviously it seems like they suspected him, but maybe they didn't have enough to run their own murder charges, or maybe they do and those charges are coming later. I don't know, but let's get to the original announcement that came out. This was posted by the Oconee County, Georgia Sheriff's Office on March 16th. "Today is the day Elijah Wood's family, everyone here at the Oconee County Sheriff's Office, and our community have been waiting for. We got him. Through countless hours of painstaking investigative work, we finally have the information we've been waiting on. This information was received on February 15th, 2022 through our ATF partners after a search of the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, NIBIN. I have never heard of this database before, but essentially it's a database. We'll get into more details about it, but it's a database that tracks ballistic information, shell, prints that could be on shell casings, maybe rifle marks that could be on bullets as well. We'll see what else we can learn about it, but it's saying that the NIBIN database produced a ballistic match of shell casings. The shell casing from the crime scene at the racetrack and a shell casing from a crime scene in Philadelphia were forensically examined and determined to be matched. So it sounds like, I believe what happens is there's a print that the way that the gun ejects the shell casing can actually leave an imprint on it. And it seems like that is, I don't know if it's 100% unique, but it's somewhat unique to that particular gun. So it sounds like the same gun used in these two different areas for two different crimes. For the past year, we've seen the pain, agony, and frustrations this murder has brought to Elijah's family, friends, and to our community. We all know this arrest will not bring Elijah back, but we hope his family, friends, and this community can now begin the healing process. We also know that the fight is not over. We must now successfully prosecute the case in a court of law. Although an arrest has been made, this case is still an active investigation. We urge anyone with information on this case to come forward. You may contact the Oconee County Sheriff's Office at 706-769-3945, and that's the call to help that they're putting out there. They've got the pieces. They were able to get an arrest, but to really bring this home, they need to make sure that that prosecution goes through and that they have all the information they can for a successful case in court. So there's other information that might be out there. Maybe there's friends that know something, people that might have seen something that now that they have this information, it's kind of making it more important. We want those people to call that information in to assist law enforcement in understanding every particular detail that they need to in terms of what's going on with this case. I think it's worth saying, of course, innocent until proven guilty. And particularly with this kind of matchup, it's got me wondering, if it does match to a particular gun, how do you put that gun in the same person's hand for both occurrences? Isn't it possible that someone gives a gun to someone else, they commit a different crime somewhere else? So I think the prosecution might have some challenges around the linkage of the cases, but quite honestly, I don't know that they need the linkage of the cases outside of that's how they got to their suspect. I would hope that there's other maybe forensic information that they're going to be able to use from the racetrack incident in particular to prove that it is Akil Crumpton that actually did it. It'll be interesting because this, I just see a little bit of a question there in terms of, okay, you've linked the gun, but does that put it in the same person's hand? Maybe they have that figured out already and they're just not coming public with it. But what is this database? Over at atf.gov, they talk about it. NIBIN is the only interstate automated ballistic imaging network in operation in the United States and is available to most major population centers in the United States. So, one of the great things we're always touting about NamUs is that it's national. Anyone can use it anywhere in the U.S. It crosses those imaginary borders of police jurisdictions or state lines. It's just open source information. Essentially, this NIBIN program is operating with that same mentality. It's available for anyone to use. Just upload whatever forensic piece of information you want to bang against the database. They're going to tell you if there's a match that comes back to it. To use NIBIN, firearms examiners or technicians enter cartridge casing evidence into the integrated ballistic identification system. These images are correlated against the database. Law enforcement can search evidence from their jurisdiction, neighboring ones, and others across the country. This program is one investigative tool accessed by law enforcement that allows each of us to share information and cooperation, easily making all of us more effective in closing cases. Sheriff Hale really wanted to strike that point. He's like, I'm very aware of a lot of criticism out there about police forces not working together, but he actually got emotional while he was saying this in a press conference. I'll have a link to it in the description box down below. He was saying that, with those Philadelphia officers that he's working with, that he would go anywhere with them. And I do know that we talk about that on the channel here. It seems like sometimes we find information that makes it seem like law enforcement isn't cooperating very strongly across their jurisdictions. Systems like this can really be helpful in that. And to kind of point that out, they do have a success stories tab here. I went and took a look at it. They've got like 5 cases listed on there. So I don't know if this is a technology that isn't used a whole lot for making these linkages, but in this particular case, the way Hale describes it, an ATF agent was like, hey, we've got this database. Why don't we just run this thing through there? And then like hours later, they're closing in on this guy. Seems like a pretty powerful tool. Let's go ahead and learn just a little bit more about it and then roll back into some of the case details over at ajc.com. To get a match, technicians feed single shell casings into a machine that takes 3D images and uploads them to the network. If a match is found, investigators are notified and specialists then have to manually confirm the match before it's considered official. So almost like with genetic genealogy where we hear about them, finding the family member, but then law enforcement will sit outside, wait till they throw some trash away, pick up a bottle they used, and then rerun the DNA for a direct comparison. You kind of have the same situation here where a specialist has to be brought in, despite the fact that the database says, yeah, this is a match. They kind of hand process it at that point again to make sure it's actually a confirmed match. With more than 4.5 million pieces of evidence, the database has helped investigators across the country learn in which crimes a single gun was used, often building sprawling spiderwebs of interconnected shootings. So there it states it pretty plainly, and I think just based on what I've seen before in some cases like this, that's going to be interesting to see what happens in the courtroom with that particular connectivity. Because yes, you've proven that the gun was used in both locations. We have footage of the person. Like we've got much more analysis that can happen now, I think, with the racetrack murder. Maybe they don't have that with the Philadelphia case. They're not being very open about that case. They haven't even named the victim in that case. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in a courtroom. Quote, NIBIN proved to be a valuable tool in helping us solve this case, and much like the TV show Forensic Files, it's really the technology behind the science that helps us get this case forward, said Alicia Jones, Assistant Special Agent for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives Atlanta Field Office. Within 8 hours of submitting ballistic evidence, Oconee investigators got a match. We were ecstatic, Hale said. Mountains were moved within hours, I will tell you that. And I think what he's talking about is basically that confirmation process. That yes, they got the match, but then they were like, okay, but we have to have this verified by someone. And basically within a matter of hours, they got that verification done. They kind of fast-tracked it to make sure they could get it done as quickly as possible. Interesting little tidbit out of this article. Crumpton had no criminal history prior to what happened at the racetrack shooting, Hale said. I believe the shooting in Philadelphia, I think that's in July of 2021. Over at fox5.com, Racetrack, the company, of course, put out a statement following the arrest. We continue to be devastated by this senseless tragedy. Our hope is that Elijah's family and the Oconee County community rests a little easier now that a suspect has been identified. The Watkinsville racetrack team will remember him as the always smiling big teddy bear who was an incredibly hard worker and their go-to guy. Elijah will be dearly missed by the entire racetrack family. And here we get a little more information. Here's another picture of Crumpton. Who is Akil Crumpton? A Philadelphia native, Crumpton attended Los Angeles Valley Community College before transferring to UGA. In Athens, Crumpton was a wide receiver for the University of Georgia from 2017 to 2019. He played in 24 total games in his career, according to UGA Athletics. Apparently had a couple of very big plays as well. Game-winning catch, knocking down would have been a game-losing catch if the other team would have caught it, and he smacked it out of the way. Seems like he was actually a pretty skilled football player. According to investigators, Crumpton was a student at UGA until 2021, the year that Wood was killed. And like I mentioned before, he was actually, I guess he was living back in Philadelphia. Here at the Philadelphia Inquirer, an FBI team and a SWAT unit arrested Akil Crumpton in West Philadelphia. Philadelphia Police Deputy Commissioner Benjamin Naish said Crumpton will face weapons charges in connection with the homicide in Philadelphia, and at this point is not being charged with murder in that case. So, like I said, either we've got some challenges with the evidence going on in that case, or a possibility that did he give the weapon to someone else and they're actually the ones that killed the person in that case, but they're going to, file some weapons charges against it. Something like that seems to be going on with the Philadelphia angle. The homicide took place in the 600 block of South 2nd Street on July 17th. The victim was shot multiple times and died less than 2 hours later. Investigators found 2 guns at the scene. Police have not released the victim's name. I guess that's another possibility. If the victim was shot multiple times by multiple people, maybe they're having trouble proving who the actual killer is. Something along those lines. It's kind of weird to hear about these conditions like this, but we really don't know enough detail about that case. Over at another article at AJC.com, Sheriff's Office officials said Crumpton was arrested on murder charges in Philadelphia, but they did not say whether he remained there. He had not been booked into the Oconee County Jail, according to online jail records. Officials have not said what led Crumpton to allegedly shoot Wood. Hale was asked about that at a press conference. He's still running under the assumption that it was a robbery gone wrong situation. Quote, we were stunned to learn that the suspect in this horrific crime is a former UGA student athlete, the UGA Athletic Association said in a statement. We offer our heartfelt sympathy to Elijah Wood's family. And here you can see UGA Football News excited at one point about bringing on Akil Crumpton to the team. Just you're going to see even Elijah's family is kind of confused by this. Like, this young man seems like he had such a life ahead of him. What happened? Why would he do that? And then take someone that was so precious to them as well. Over at onlineathens.com, a little more detail on the investigation. During a year-long investigation into the shooting death of racetrack station clerk Elijah Wood, the Oconee County Sheriff's Office compiled files on 51 people investigated as potential murder suspects. Was he one of them? No, he was not in that stack of files. Quote, this person was never on the radar until February 15th, said Sheriff James Hale. Hale said that there's no timetable for Crumpton's return to Watkinsville, but it should be soon. He also could not say how cooperative the suspect is with police in Philadelphia, where Crumpton grew up and has family. Hale declined to say if the gun used in the killings has been recovered. So that's another big question mark as well. I think they've got the forensic information tight enough that I don't know that it's going to hurt the case too much. They already know. I mean, if the shell casing matches and they've somehow got that gun associated to him, that's, I think, a fairly strong link. I wouldn't be surprised if they do have the gun already because of what happened in the Philadelphia shooting, but I don't know. Trip Lemons, the brother-in-law of Wood, said this week that the family is relieved about the arrest. He said he was also surprised by the suspect's identity. It's sad that someone who could have had so much promise with his life could take the life of somebody else who had so much promise. It really is. It's really, really hard to understand how things like this happen. And here we are, literally just a few days before what would be Elijah Wood's 25th birthday. But I think his family can certainly take some comfort in knowing that they were on the path to justice. They had law enforcement working very hard, cooperating in two very different areas to pull this case together. And hopefully that justice will be served very, very soon. They did have a balloon release recently. It wound up happening just a few days after this announcement. The memorial for 23-year-old Elijah Wood came just days after an arrest and the man's murder was made. Quote, we decided to release balloons on the anniversary of Elijah's murder, said Trip Lemons. Also, a little bit in celebration of the capture and the arrest of the killer. Trip also had one last comment I want to share with you guys here. Once sentenced, then we'll have some relief of it. And then there can be some forgiveness because we are a godly family, he said. If you have the time, please take about 20 minutes, check out the clip I have, or the link I have down below to this Facebook page with the Sheriff Hale talking about this case, how it came together. He's moved practically to tears at a few times as well. And I just think it's really special and a good example of something that he wants to call out to, that law enforcement can cooperate with each other, can stretch across jurisdictions, and they can get some very strong and good results. And I think so far what we're seeing in this case is an excellent example of that. Of course, I want to really help support that, and hopefully we can get more people to cooperate in this way. Maybe more people become aware of that database because of this story and lean on that as well. There's so many good possibilities that can happen from the information that's kicking out around this story. So I really appreciate his tenacity with this case. He talks about, I mean, basically they were going home just to sleep. They would turn around, get right back to work. This case was being investigated for 364 days straight. They pulled together all these experts. I mean, hey, Oconee County, they had, it was their first murder within 2 years. Like, obviously, they probably don't have a super sharp skill set with dealing with that type of occurrence, but they knew to reach for help. They pulled in all these experts from different organizations, put the team together, and one of the people in that room said, hey, wait, we've got this database. Maybe we should give this a shot. And that changed the whole game here. Sometimes it really is, it's about a team effort, and I'm just really happy to see that this is a case where that shines. Before I end today's video, I want to give a very big thank you to new patron Kira McQueen. Hey, Kira, thank you so much for supporting us over on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com, where you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even buy us a coffee like Tawny Michael recently did. If you want to be part of that team, please take a moment and visit lordandarts.com. Join us again on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked right here on the Lord and Arts channel.